we are going to talk about something that is super top of mind for me, actually. The company that I work for, Amnitsa, actually just recently rolled out a data center infrastructure management product. So lots happening in the data center space. So we wanted to kind of do a deep dive and talk about what the heck is going on in data center, first of all. And then I think there's a lot of implications for procurement and supply chain as we see major construction projects start to take place and as companies continue to move. I feel like things always typically come full circle. Tie dyes in, tie dyes out, tie dyes in. Birkenstocks are in, Birkenstocks are out, Birkenstocks are in. On-prem was in, then everything went to the cloud. Now we're seeing a pivot back to organizations moving things back in-house on-prem, at least in a hybrid model where there's some virtual and some in-house. So Dr. Elouise, I have, just because I've kind of been living in data center world here for the past couple months, and I'm actually attending, if for those who are listening who are in the Bay Area, who are in the data center space or wanting to learn more about it, there's a pretty major conference coming up June 4th and 5th at the Santa Clara Convention Center called Data Center Expo. It's June 4th and 5th, so 2 full days. There are 8 tracks. I will be there with my team. We're participating in the data center track. Our chief procurement officer and head of AI will actually be doing a session talking about the asset-centric strategy as it relates to the data center space. But if anyone's interested in learning more and local in the Bay Area and wants to attend, just ping me on LinkedIn. We have some free passes for folks who are interested in attending and wanting to network. So this will be my first time really networking and being around data center folks and attending a data center event. So I'm looking forward. I have a lot to learn.
I didn't even know there was a data center world. It sounds so cool. And when you come back, we'll have to record something about it because I want to hear all about it.
So because we launched a product and now have a whole go-to-market motion for data center, specifically asset management, there is a whole world in the data center space, and there's actually several events that take place around the country because this is such an emerging market, and I think we're going to see more and more take place. And I think we're going to see larger procurement organizations or more infused AI agents to support the data centers because there's a lot happening and a lot being purchased.
Well, and it's certainly a seminal moment or a transitional moment because, as you said, all things come that were in style go out, and all things out of style come back in. And when you've been in business long enough, you realize that we just kind of yo-yo back and forth because when I started my career, everything was on-prem, and then we moved to co-located data centers, and then we went all in on cloud. Actually, there was a big fight about cloud or no cloud, and then absolutely everybody went in on cloud, and now we seem to be coming back on-prem, or at least some hybrid version. So it's and my career has, especially early on, I have a lot of, as we'll get to throughout this episode, a lot of data center stories.
One of my bucket list items is to actually spend like half a day in a data center as well. I know it's hard with all the security, but I'm on a mission to find someone in the Bay Area that will let me kind of job shadow, right? And crash. Like, I'd love to know day in the life, like what's it like actually working in a data center. So that's on my list.
Well, I've spent plenty of time in data centers, and the first thing is they're very, very, very cold because, of course, they've got massive HVAC cooling all those servers, and they're typically dark because unless you're walking in a particular area, the lights will come on. At least in my experience, there's often a lot of security, so even just you're not just wandering around randomly. It's pretty impressive. And for my last book, I was spending a lot of time researching AWS and the other cloud providers. just at least of those three. And the security and sort of, there's a great video on AWS, and the secure, like multiple layers of just physical security and just redundant systems coming in and out. It was really impressive, and that was just one data center. So I hope you can get there. If not, I can probably arrange for a tour of our data center in Chicago if we happen to be there.
And from all the videos I've watched, I feel like I'm a YouTube stalker of data, all things data center. They kind of look like, when it's Halloween time and you're going to buy pumpkins, it kind of looks like a maze.
Oh yeah.
But it's very, very well organized, and everything is very strategically laid out and placed. But if you just walk in, it just looks like a maze to me, right? Like I feel like I
and
would
it
know what
is.
to do.
And it's easy to get confused and lost, and that's obviously happened to me a number of times. It's just like, especially if you don't go in there all the time. And back in the day, you would go into the server room, especially when they were on-prem, all the time. Then as we co-located, the number of trips shrunk. But yeah, it's and also it's just like the technology's evolved so much. Used to be back in the day, if something needed to be reset, you had to like get in the car and drive down to the data center, badge in, walk all the way down, and then hit the button on the server. I mean, dealt with that for years, and then eventually you started to get more smarter machines that could be operated remotely, even if the physical hardware hung up. Switches that you could remotely dial into, and various network gear. It's become so much more advanced, and now everything's virtual, or many things are virtual, so it's even more sophisticated.
Yeah, it's an app on your phone, right? You can click a
Yeah,
couple buttons and take care of most things. We'll not say everything, but a
yeah,
lot
most
of things
things.
you can just click and take care of virtually. All right, so 5 topics that I want to chat about around data centers. So, first is the AI revolution in data centers.
Oh, you're going right in on the big one.
So, let's just be real. I thought this was kind of a good kickoff because a lot of what we're seeing in the growth is specifically driven by the explosion in AI, right? This AI, ChatGPT, OpenAI, 5 years ago was not a thing. Hence, we didn't see nearly the amount of need for data centers, but it's a huge, huge focus area. I've mentioned on the show before, I listened to the podcast, The Artificial Intelligence Show. Paul Roitzu, who's the CEO of the AI Institute, he and his head of content do a podcast, release it every Monday, talking about all the newest, latest, and greatest that have happened the previous week. And a constant theme on their show is actually data centers. And they're talking about how organizations are committing to billion-dollar projects that are not even going to be ready for 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
So they're investing in the data center infrastructure now as a bet that it's going to be so important that even though it's 3 to 5 years out, it makes sense to make those investments now and start the process. So there's 3 kind of newsworthy things that I wanted to call out just from doing some research. So the first is NVIDIA has something called NVLink Fusion, and it's allowing integration of CPUs from some of their partners like Qualcomm with NVIDIA's Blackwell GPUs. And this initiative aims to meet diverse customer demands and expand their AI ecosystem. So there's been a lot of news and information around this new launch that they've introduced recently. Second is Qualcomm's return to data center CPUs. So they are re-entering the data center CPU market with plans to develop custom processors that integrate seamlessly with NVIDIA's AI chips, aiming to deliver high performance, energy efficient computing solutions. So big partnership there between those 2 organizations, which is driving significant growth between both of those powerhouses needing more data center capabilities. And then the third is a company called AMD, and they have agreed to sell the server manufacturing division of their recently acquired company called ZT Systems to a company called Seminia for $3 billion. And this is part of their strategy to enhance domestic manufacturing and streamline operations. So going back towards the whole industry around servers and the manufacturing and the capabilities that are going to be needed for servers, which are then going to be housed in these massive data center projects.
Yeah, I would say this is, I mean, the AI thing, I was just joking, the all in starting point. I would hazard a guess that, or hypothesize that, no, maybe it's more of just a flat out guess that uh, existing data centers were not built for the AI sort of revolution. I don't know if we're calling it a revolution yet, but the AI is just such a massive power consumption, processing, memory, storage, exponential capacity required that I wonder if existing data centers need to be completely rebuilt from the ground up. And I think the news articles are kind of getting at that.
So we have been doing quite a few inquiries with analysts as we're figuring out the data center space. And I would say top two in all the analysts that we've spoken to in regards to what are the top priorities for folks working in data centers is energy use. It
Mhm.
is a huge, huge focus and priority, figuring out how are we going to power all of these data center needs. And to your point, how is that going to work in particular with old data centers who don't necessarily have the right infrastructure to support the volume that's going to be needed moving forward? So can we revitalize these legacy data centers, or do we need to rebuild?
Yeah. And I think, well, I think the energy requirements, I do think we'll get some innovations or some breakthroughs that will reduce the power consumption and the electricity needs. But also, like if you look at the U.S. power grid, I mean, it's got like that has some gaps in it as well. And so, like at the pace AI is consuming resources, could very quickly outstrip the grid's ability to keep up.
Yep. Which this feeds in nicely to my second topic is around sustainability and energy innovations, right? So you
Yes.
just mentioned what are we doing to reduce the energy footprint? So as data centers expand, again, whether we're taking an existing data center and revitalizing it or expanding it or building new, takes up massive amounts of energy, which we don't necessarily have the bandwidth to support right now. So whether or not, what political party you support, and I know sustainability is not necessarily a major focus, sustainability matters to everyone because if you don't have energy, you can't power your data center.
Yeah.
So there's a couple things that I found around green center data initiatives that some companies are investing in sustainable practices, such as utilizing renewable energy sources and implementing energy efficient technology to try to reduce the environmental impact that data centers are having. And then the second is liquid cooling technologies. So to manage the heat generated by high performance computing, some data centers are adopting liquid cooling solutions, which I didn't know a lot about until I started getting involved in this space. And basically what it is, it's a more efficient way to cool than a traditional air cooling method. So think about an old school air conditioner and then think about an air conditioner in 2025, right? They take They're more efficient. They take less resources. So kind of the same thing applied to cooling in the data center.
Yeah, and I think it's worth, without uh, trying not to bump up to political affiliations and sort of debates. I mean, it's clear nuclear power is back on the table because on one hand, it is a very clean energy. On the other hand, there's a lot of very toxic waste that comes out of it. So without trying to like take a side on that, 3 Mile Island is scheduled to reopen in 2028. Microsoft is partnered with Constellation Energy to bring that back online. And so I think it does beg a question: is should we bring back nuclear power to efficiently generate this, or is there newer sort of technology in that realm? And it's really interesting. I'm fascinated to see if nuclear power does come back into the US.
For the entrepreneurs who listen to our show, this is a space wide open, right? Come up with a really cool innovation in this space and you could really, really skyrocket. I mean, all you need is a couple companies and explosion, right? Once you have a solution, I think this is going to be a big focus area for organizations.
No doubt.
All right, third topic is edge computing and decentralization. So, edge computing is transforming the data center landscape by bringing processing closer to the data sources. So, what does this mean? This means we've already seen an expansion of edge data centers and the rise of Internet of things and real-time applications, which have led to proliferation of edge data centers, reducing latency and improving performance for end users. So trying to bring things closer to the original source versus the old model, which was cloud, 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 just get it away. Now it's looking at how do we actually bring it back and bring it closer.
And I'll give you a good example. The iPhone. Apple has been pushing more and more processing to the iPhone, which keeps your data more secure, because over the last couple decades, or maybe decade, the as you were saying, the trend is to push the data all to the cloud.
Yep.
So big tech can take it, mine it, do whatever. And Apple's made a very concerted effort to keep your data on your phone, increasingly add the AI processing on your phone. I'll say that one of the things that's always frustrated me about Siri is I'll be driving and I'll say, hey, Siri, do something, something, and it can't connect to the internet for whatever reason. So it can't do what I need it to do when I need to do it. So that's driven me nuts. And my understanding, as with the new releases, that more and more of the iOS software is going to be much or processed closer to the home on the device.
I go straight to ChatGPT now.
Well,
Right?
that's
I
good
mean,
too.
I don't even just go straight to the source. I mean, I feel like Google search is going away, right? We just go straight to the AI app, and used to drive me crazy too with Siri. So I forgot Siri. Siri pushed aside, and I'm just now straight to ChatGPT. And as I'm saying this, it's triggering up on my phone.
Hey, I know. I had to like check my watch and put it, like, bury it so it couldn't hear me talking. I don't even know where my phone is, but yeah.
All right, and then the second thing I pulled in this bucket is integration with 5G networks.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the other big challenges with the explosion of data center is the time at which data can be processed. Slow data processing is not going to make for happy customers. So what edge computing is doing through 5G deployments, it's enabling faster data processing and opening new possibilities for industries. And some of these industries that it's been impacting are autonomous vehicles. So that, like Waymo, for example, which is big here in the Bay Area, SoCal, Phoenix, where you have the self-driving cars. And then the other component is smart cities, where you're incorporating more technologies in some of these more modern cities as they're building out their infrastructure.
Yeah. Oh, well, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
So I think, and I was getting, I think it's worth noting that the internet backbone, that too is built on legacy tech, and it leaves a lot to be desired, and it is not as fault tolerant as one might hope. So there is a question about how we upgrade the backbone itself on which all the data travels, and that that's another entrepreneurial opportunity, because this evolved from a very it evolved from the Cold War, and sort of the infrastructure has been upgraded over year after year, but it's still, I think 5G, one of the beauties of that is that it starts to get us help the backbone. But I'd say there's probably 90% more to go in terms of innovating and upgrading the backbone.
And I'll tell you what, I think I take for granted speed and data processing. And when I was traveling last week, the hotel that we were at for the week was having some challenges, and people were going crazy, right? Like, we
Yeah.
expect instant data accessing, instant ability to pull up whatever we want. And it made me really think about, wow, like the page is taking 10 seconds to pull up versus instantly. And here I am getting upset and frustrated. But to your point, right, it goes back to the whole 5G network, and it's kind of the expectation now, right? It's kind of the level set. But with the whole data center space, they're struggling with the mass volumes, and they're going to have to come up with a better solution.
100%. And like, I'll go one step further on the plane. Like, certain planes have really good high speed internet where you can just watch TikTok all the whole time, or stream movies, and other ones you can't even load your stupid email. So like, I get so frustrated when I can't actually do what I need to do online on a plane, which, like, I don't know, when I started my career, the internet hardly existed, and getting it on a plane took, like, I don't know, it was 2010, 2012 before we started getting internet on planes. So now in 2025, I'm getting all uppity and snooty because my Wi-Fi is not going fast enough on a plane, which is just like mind blowing.
Shout out to United. So it was a 6-hour flight into Fort Lauderdale, and it was a new plane, definitely
Ooh.
noticeable. I don't know if that has anything to do, but the internet was functioned extremely well, both to and from. And that's huge for me. If I'm on a 6-hour flight and my internet doesn't work, I may have a full-blown meltdown on the flight.
Well, so I've had some United flights that haven't had great internet. I have had one or two that were really good. On newer planes. Delta, amazing internet, and JSX, for those of you in the West, that's sort of semi-private, or it's private for the masses, not, and they have really good internet too. So
Yeah. So, fourth bucket, infrastructure development and market dynamics. So, data center industry is experiencing unprecedented growth. So we continuously hear about downsizing, corporations doing layoffs. Microsoft just did a pretty major layoff last week. But when you hear about data centers, it's kind of the opposite. And you kind of hear growth and expansion mode come up over and over again. And I just wanted to share some stats that I found, just to give folks a sense of the volume that we're talking about here. So and this is just US. This is not even the global number. The US data center construction market is projected to reach $12.33 billion by 2030. So that's not very far away. I mean, that is just absolutely major, reflecting a compound annual growth rate of 15.5%. Global investments, so significant investments, are also being made worldwide outside of the US with projects like the 5 billion net zero AI data center campus in Saudi Arabia, supporting the futuristic city of Neom. And that is spelled Neom. If you want to look it up, it's a really interesting project around a modern city. And in order to support that, they are building a major data center campus. So that will be a fun one to follow as that progresses.
I would, it's interesting. I mean, those are massive scales at which it's just amazing. What's interesting or of note is those are huge construction jobs that will take decade or two to build out. However, once those data centers are built, there's not a lot of jobs in those data centers. And I think it's interesting. Whereas, like, if you build in the 80s and 90s, when we built malls all across the United States, you build the mall, you have lots of retail locations where people would work. There were jobs in the mall, there were people going to the mall. Data center, you build that in Saudi Arabia, that campus of data centers, and I'm sure in the US we'll get data center campuses as well. You start to get those built out, but then they just sit dark or relatively dark because you don't have but 10, 15 people working there. And it's an interesting change in the dynamics of what it means to build something and the longevity of the jobs that it provides.
And I will also throw in there that I think we're going to see major changes in the construction space as we start to introduce robotics. So
Yes.
the typical jobs that would come with these large scale construction projects, I think maybe not today. I'm not walking around in the Bay Area seeing, robotics out and about building buildings, but I think we will in the future. So actually,
Well,
the amount of manpower is going to be less.
yeah, and I in my TikTok travels, there are like examples of houses 3D printed with concrete. I mean, they're just amazing. So you could imagine 3D printed data centers, and part of the reason is the Bay Area is so impacted. But when you start to get out to some of these other more rural areas that are flatter and less impediments, we'll just use that as a broad impediments. You could very much, I think you make a great point. You could very much see autonomous construction, and I think that's wild. One other, since we're speaking about TikTok, another thing I've seen is there's a lot of you get a lot of ads and sort of folks that are shilling for different things, but I have seen some TikToks of investors or sort of folks that are cautioning investors from investing in data centers because of the complexity, and it's a unique, their point is that it's a unique business. So you can't just, if you're buying up real estate for single family or multifamily homes, those skills don't translate to the data center space. And I just, of course, that catches my eye when I see something like that, and it's really fascinating.
But on the reverse, if you want to make yourself a linchpin and indispensable, have a niche that other people don't know and can't easily get into. So it could be a really interesting strategy and market for investors and folks in the construction space.
Or hear me out, a supplier that is vertically integrated on building data centers with robots and AI and all the other stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's there's going to be a whole industry more than what we have today that's built around the data center space. So who's going to figure it out and who's going to, be the leader in that space? But I think we're going to see lots of innovation.
Well, and we have come over the last few years to equate the cloud infrastructure providers, Google, Amazon, and Microsoft, as sort of the three, but uh, the IBM and Oracle, and I can't believe I'm saying this, have sort of made some inroads or still remaining relevant. And just like you pointed out, NVIDIA's getting into this and some of these other players. So again, I think we're at a pivot from just the three big cloud providers to other, especially AI specific cloud providers. So if I'm looking at my career trajectory, I think there's a lot of untapped space in this data center market.
Mhm. And I'll kind of throw in here. Um, we've been asked why an ITAM provider is venturing into the data center space, right? It seems a little out of the norm. And to your point around companies innovating and figuring out new solutions in the space, I just wanted to speak to that for a couple minutes. So, legacy data center infrastructure management tools are what's called room centric, which means they map the racks, they map the power, and they map the space inside the facility. So that's kind of been the traditional legacy model. What happens in that situation is it leaves major blind spots in today's hybrid environments where you've got on-prem and in the cloud, and you've got, multiple locations, multiple facilities. So what happens is assets move between data centers. They move between the clouds, they move between edge locations. And then as soon as an asset leaves the original room, you lose complete visibility. So having an asset-centric model that allows you to track the asset over its entire life cycle, no matter where it's based, I think is really important. And so I'm just sharing this as an example of a company like ours who has decided to add a new product offering and pivot into the data center space because we feel there's a very large opportunity and a hole to fill. And I think we're going to see some other companies get creative and innovative with, other types of solutions.
Yeah, and I think again, uh, I would hypothesize that like we don't even know how to track or what an AI asset is. And so there's a lot of exploration to do, or sort of definition, that's probably a better word, to defining what an AI asset is. And I can guarantee you those room whatever you call them are not built for AI asset tracking. And so we're talking about this again, it's you have the room, you have the servers, and then you have the applications. But now we have to even get more nuanced in terms of AI models and AI agents, and all of that has to be tracked.
Yeah, and so in a flexible model, in an object-based model, the object can be anything. So in your example, what you would be tracking then is the AI agent,
Yeah.
right? But you're right,
And
that's very progressive and different than how a lot of the legacy solutions have been built.
yeah.
All right, fifth thing I wanted to speak to as we close out today is community and regulatory considerations. We'll leave the spicy topic to the end. So, massive challenges around regulations, right? How do we regulate in this space, and who's responsible for it? So I look at it as you've got the local level, so local cities and government, and then you've got national and federal. So who's owning what, and how is it going to play out? So a couple examples here. If you want to Google this, the Wall Street Journal actually did an article on it. But in places like Tucker County, which is in West Virginia, so East Coast, residents are uniting against proposed data center concerns due to the environmental impact and lack of local input in decision making. So
Yeah.
you're actually seeing a city where you've got residents coming together that are protesting and taking legal action to prevent data centers from being built in their community. So I think we maybe are going to actually see more of this as well, where you've got local people uniting and coming together. And then regulatory developments, governments are implementing policies to balance, and this is hard, technological advancement. So we want to be the leader in the world, and that's hard when we're competing against China and countries that are investing heavily. So you've got this balance of how do we be the leader, but yet how do we do it in a safe and fair way to take care of our citizens and our communities? And I don't know that anybody has the answer to that.
Yeah. And also, since you mentioned governments, certainly at the national level, you have data privacy concerns, and GDPR has been a very big development in terms of managing data across locations. And it's not just good enough to have data residing. If you want a global application, you can't just have data centers in the US, because guess what? We have, let's see, rather, I don't know, loose data privacy regulations. And so folks that run in other countries, or businesses that are based in other countries, do not want their data stored outside of, say, the EU continent or China or Japan or these other places. So like national regulations on data privacy is a whole different thing. And I do like your point about even local communities. Like, where do we build these facilities? And it gets to has to do with distribution centers and fulfillment centers as well. Where do we build manufacturing sites? There's a lot of talk about bringing manufacturing back to the US. Well, where do you put these? Because it's not always, we can't just jam a big manufacturing or even fulfillment center in the middle of the Bay Area. Like, the Bay Area is like way impacted. And so then do you put it like 100 miles east of here? And these are serious considerations. And it also gets to, again, things like power, connectivity, and then what's the environmental impact? Because we've learned through the whole fracking, the hydrocarbon, or anyway, whatever, the natural gas fracking can destroy water tables or water supplies. So we have to make sure we're not, or at least local residents are at least more attuned to that and don't necessarily want their drinking water consumed or contaminated by, just to support data centers. And so local communities rising up against this is, first of all, it's not new. In fact, I wrote my dissertation about the Bay Area rising up against the federal government, which is a whole nother topic for another day.
I think that was before my time.
Yeah, no, it was definitely. But it's interesting to see community activism. And if you're not careful, these big tech companies can run smack into that, where you just assume that everybody wants more jobs, but that's not always the case.
Mm-hmm. And to your earlier point, if we're going to be able to run data centers almost fully virtually with just a very small team, maybe the remote kind of desert type locations will become the future of data center. If once it's built, we don't need a massive labor force to support them, that could be a trend that we start seeing to take place.
Yeah, and level 3, which is one of the big co-location, I'm sure they do much more. I'm sure I'm underselling them, but they're based out in Vegas, and right in the, in the desert, and they've got a massive facility out there. And maybe that is more of what we're going to see. And there's been a bunch of moves of manufacturing out to Vegas in particular, or Nevada. So maybe that's it. The other thing to sort of to mix a couple of these topics is let's say you give tax breaks to put a big data center out in the, or at least the construction of the data center out in the desert. but maybe there should be some sort of tolling so that the amount of traffic that comes through enhances the local communities. There's no reason it can't be a win-win. But again, that bumps up against politics, but it's worth at least discussing.
Yeah. So are we closing out the pod today?
I have one more story just
Okay.
to sort of bring this all, because I find this utterly fascinating. I love data centers. In the first, so everybody knows, hopefully by now, or at least listeners of the show know, that I used to work for Abbreviate, which was one of the early .com B2B softwares, reverse auctions. So it was all procurement, and I've been doing this for like a gazillion years.
And reverse auctions are coming full circle. We talked
They are
about
coming full circle.
I feel like I've seen reverse auctions more and more in the last 6 months than I have in quite some time.
Yes, they are popular now, and I guarantee you that we're going to see agentic reverse auctions here very quickly. But if not, maybe that's an entrepreneurial area for somebody. But in the early days of the .com, like you had all you had was on-premise data centers, and slowly you started to get these co-location facilities. I remember the first one we used was called Digital Island. It was so funny. And we would drive servers down and plug them into the rack and do all the stuff. I was a supervisor. I didn't do a lot
My
of the
marketing
racking.
brain is imagining decorating the data center in an island theme.
Exactly. I can't even remember if it was even themed, but those were the heady days of the .com, where there was just cash, and we were just like fire hoses of cash to invest in this stuff. And then very quickly, these data centers, these independent co-location data centers, started getting gobbled up. I believe it was Cable and Wireless bought Digital Island, and I don't know, a couple, anyway, but in the first, I'm going to say 4 years, roughly in the first 4 years, we had our data center set of servers, may have been like 3, 4, 5, 6 racks of stuff. I don't know. We moved data centers 10 times. It was absolutely absurd.
When
So
you say move data center, are you meaning entirely different facilities or rooms within the same?
No, different facilities, different contracts. I mean, back in the day, if I had stuck on that path, I mean, I would be the absolute expert on sourcing data centers by this point. But yeah, like, because back in the day, there was barely any virtual servers. There was no, I mean, it was nascent technology. There really wasn't cloud to speak of. The best you could do was co-located or fully managed co-located. So there was just like, it was wild back then. And I mean, of course I'm dating myself, but yeah, we would, like, on a Saturday, we would like shut the site down on Friday night and drive all the servers across town, or we would stand up a second, like we moved from the Bay Area to Chicago servers into the Kearney office. So we bought a bunch of servers, transferred everything over, and on a Friday night did the cut over to the Chicago
That's
server.
a lot of work. Not only,
Oh my God.
not only the heavy lifting of all this equipment, but the peripherals and getting everything plugged in and working correctly is not easy.
Oh my God! Shout out to Joel Saldana, who still works at Kearney. The work he did. Yeah, so we went from one Digital Island facility to another. Then we went to a facility in Georgia. I never even made it there. And then that facility got, that was Bell South. That was affiliated with EDS, which who owned us at the time. And then when we no longer owned by EDS, we moved. I think we moved to the Kearney facility, and then Kearney moved out of its building into a Cable and Wireless. Oh, I mean, just on and on and on. It was like, but 10 data center moves. It was, and that was definitely back in the day when you had to drive down there.
And that makes me think of moving houses or apartments, which I absolutely despise. And I feel like moving a data center might be worse.
Oh yeah. And because in the back of the day, you didn't have smart switches. So every switch had to connect to a server, and it all had to be then connected to the router. So it was like point to point to point connections. So if something was wrong or a cable was bad, it was like really a bear to trace it all back and figure it out. So I'm not going to name names, but in one of our moves, somebody got the bright idea to save some money by wiring all, it was Cat5 cable at the time, so all the network cables, they built them all custom, which turned out to be a colossal disaster because a bunch of them were
They're not
intermittent.
interchangeable.
Well, yeah, that too, but also they were buggy because they weren't crimped and whatever, when you pull the wire off to expose. Oh my God, that was like, and by the end of the weekend, the migration wasn't working, so they had to rip all those cables out, like easily several thousand cables, throw them away, and buy new ones and recable it. Like just stories like that. You would never get that. Like today, it's like pull out my credit card and go to Amazon or AWS and get some server capacity. I mean, it's so wildly different.
Yeah.
And,
Well,
and oh, go
it
ahead.
sounds like Dr. Elouise is our resident data center expert here on the show.
Old data center, because I haven't really kept up with it, but I do want to leave everybody with one final thought, that we're very much talking about this in today's technology. And at the risk of throwing out a buzzword, I do think it's worth noting that quantum computing could and will change data centers dramatically, but it's just way too early to know how that will be.
And how early is it a year? Is it 2 years? Is it 3 years? I feel like it's hard to even put predictions on things with how quickly advancements are happening.
But to tie this whole episode together, you can certainly see that data centers would be a great use case for quantum computing. And I say that without actually even knowing much about the technology, but at the levels of speed and efficiency that quantum computing does, you could see where it would completely revolutionize data centers. So that's yet a third entrepreneurial area. Look at us. We're building businesses for people.
We're creating billionaires here on the Dual Source Discourse podcast.
Exactly.